What if everything you've been told about building wealth after 60 is not just wrong, but actively destroying your financial future? Imagine discovering that the very financial habits praised by experts, the ones that seem responsible and prudent, are actually the greatest threat to your retirement security. This isn't theory or speculation. This comes from one of the greatest investment minds in history, a man who helped build one of the most successful investment firms ever created, yet openly admitted that a single mindset shift could have doubled his personal fortune. Charlie Munger, the brilliant partner behind Warren Buffett's legendary success, revealed something that should shake every investor over 60 to their core. Despite accumulating billions and demonstrating extraordinary financial wisdom throughout his life, he looked back with brutal honesty and acknowledged a pattern of thinking that cost him immensely. The fascinating part? This wasn't about picking the wrong stocks or mistiming the market. It was something far more fundamental, something that most people never question because it sounds so sensible, so safe, so responsible. Has this ever happened to you? You reach your 60s with a decent nest egg, maybe not as much as you hoped for, but something solid. The financial advisors, the books, the retirement calculators all tell you the same thing. Keep saving, cut expenses, invest conservatively but consistently. Build that safety net higher and higher. It feels right, doesn't it? Responsible, mature, the grown-up thing to do. But what if this entire framework is designed for a different stage of life, and following it after 60 is like using a map for the wrong city? But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Here's the uncomfortable truth that the financial industry rarely discusses openly. The rules that work brilliantly in your 30s, 40s, even your 50s, become dangerous liabilities after 60. The timeline changes everything. When you're younger, you have the luxury of decades to recover from mistakes, to ride out market downturns, to rebuild after setbacks. Every year is an asset, a tool for compounding, a buffer against catastrophe. But after 60, time transforms from your greatest ally into your most precious and diminishing resource. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover challenges the very foundation of conventional retirement wisdom. Munger's insight reveals why the obsessive focus on saving after 60 isn't just ineffective, it's actively counterproductive. The mathematics of wealth building undergoes a profound transformation when your recovery window shrinks to single digits. A mistake that would be merely inconvenient at 35 becomes catastrophic at 65. A safe strategy that preserves capital might actually be the riskiest approach of all when measured against what truly matters at this stage of life. The question isn't whether you should be financially responsible after 60. Of course you should. The question is, what does true financial responsibility actually look like when the game has fundamentally changed? Think of your financial life as a football game that spans decades. In the first half, you're on the offensive, running plays, taking calculated risks, pushing forward aggressively. A fumble hurts, but you've got quarters left to make up the difference. The scoreboard still has plenty of time on it. This is how most people approach wealth building in their 30s, 40s, even 50s. And it makes perfect sense. You have the greatest asset any investor can possess: time itself, working its compounding magic on every decision, every investment, every dollar saved. But something profound happens when you cross into your 60s. The game doesn't end, but the strategy must transform completely. Munger understood this shift better than almost anyone. He recognized that the mindset that serves you brilliantly in the first half of the wealth-building journey becomes your greatest liability in the second half. It's not that the principles of good investing change. It's that the mathematics of recovery undergo a fundamental transformation that most people fail to recognize until it's too late. Here's the hidden truth that separates those who retire with genuine security from those who struggle, despite doing everything they were told to do. After 60, the real enemy isn't underperformance. It's catastrophic loss. Most financial advice obsesses over optimization, over squeezing out an extra percentage point or two of return. Should you get 7% or 8% annually? That conversation, while seemingly important, completely misses the actual threat lurking in your portfolio. The real danger is the event that cuts your wealth in half. Imagine you've reached 65 with $500,000 carefully accumulated over decades of discipline and smart decisions. You've done everything right. Then a market crash, a failed investment, a single poor decision driven by the pressure to catch up cuts that number to 250,000. On paper, it's the same 50% loss that a 30-year-old might experience. But the impact exists in entirely different dimensions of reality. That 30-year-old has 3 decades ahead to rebuild, to let compound interest work its magic, to increase earnings, to recover fully and even surpass their previous wealth. You, at 65, have perhaps 5 to 10 working years remaining. The mathematics aren't just different, they're brutal. That single loss has essentially erased 15 to 20 years of wealth building, and you simply don't have 15 to 20 years to make it back. The runway has run out while you're still trying to take off. This revelation transforms everything about how you should approach financial decisions after 60. The journey from aggressive growth to capital preservation isn't just a suggestion. It's an essential survival strategy. Now, I want to go even deeper into this mindset transformation, because understanding the mathematics is one thing, but rewiring decades of ingrained financial behavior is another challenge entirely. The psychological shift required goes against everything our culture teaches us about ambition and growth. If this realization about the difference between young losses and late life losses has changed how you see your own financial situation, write in the comments. Defense mode activated. The cultural obsession with spectacular returns has poisoned the way most people think about investing after 60. We're surrounded by stories of overnight success, of someone who turned 10,000 into a million with cryptocurrency, of the neighbor who tripled their money on some tech stock. These narratives create a toxic backdrop that makes steady, boring success feel like failure. But here's the revelation that changes everything when you truly internalize it. The tortoise doesn't just beat the hare in this race. The tortoise utterly dominates over any meaningful time frame. Consider 2 investors, both starting their 60s with the same nest egg. The first achieves a consistent 8% annually, year after year, without drama or excitement. The second swings for the fences, hitting spectacular 30% gains one year, then suffering 25% losses the next, riding the emotional roller coaster of aggressive investing. On the surface, the second investor might seem more dynamic, more engaged, more alive to opportunity. But the mathematics tell a devastatingly different story. If you're finding value in this conversation, consider subscribing to the channel. We're creating a community of thoughtful investors who prioritize wisdom over hype, and I'd love to have you as part of it. That steady 8% compounds relentlessly, building wealth with the quiet power of consistency. Meanwhile, the volatile investor finds themselves on a treadmill, making up losses from down years, never quite achieving the sustained growth that comes from stability. After a decade, the gap between them isn't just noticeable, it's enormous. The boring investor has substantially more wealth, substantially less stress, and substantially better sleep. They've won the game by refusing to play the high-stakes version. This insight connects to a deeper psychological transformation that Munger identified as essential for investors past 60. Our entire culture runs on FOMO, fear of missing out. Every advertisement, every social media post, every conversation with friends who made money on the latest trend feeds this anxiety that you're being left behind, that opportunity is slipping through your fingers while you sit on the sidelines. It's exhausting and it's dangerous, especially when your margin for error has evaporated. Munger flips this entire framework on its head with a simple but profound shift in perspective. Instead of fearing what you might miss, fear what might destroy you. Instead of FOMO, embrace FOBO, fear of blowing out. This isn't about becoming paralyzed by anxiety or hiding cash under your mattress. It's about recognizing that the decision framework governing your choices must fundamentally change when catastrophic loss becomes unrecoverable. When you internalize FOBO as your guiding principle, decisions become clearer almost immediately. That speculative investment that promises triple-digit returns but carries significant downside risk. Your 30-year-old self might have allocated 5 or 10% to it. Your 65-year-old self recognizes it as a threat to your entire financial foundation and walks away. Without regret, the transformation happens in your gut, in your instinctive response to opportunity. You're no longer asking, "What might I gain?" You're asking, "What might I lose and can I afford it?" This shift creates a kind of financial immune system, protecting you from the viruses of bad decisions that circulate endlessly through markets and media. But understanding this principle intellectually is just the beginning. The real challenge lies in implementing it when everyone around you seems to be getting richer faster, when the boring approach feels like you're missing the party. That psychological battle is where most people stumble, even when they know better. If you've felt that internal struggle between chasing excitement and protecting what you've built, drop in the comments, FOBO mindset. There's a profound irony in how our culture celebrates disruption and innovation while simultaneously creating the conditions for financial disaster. We're trained from birth to chase the new, the exciting, the revolutionary. The entrepreneur who breaks all the rules becomes a hero. The investor who bets big and wins becomes a legend. But this worship of excitement creates a dangerous blind spot, especially for those navigating their 60s and beyond. Munger discovered something that sounds almost heretical in our modern economy. Boring is beautiful. Not just acceptable, not just safe, genuinely beautiful in its outcomes. The investments that make terrible dinner party stories often make extraordinary retirement foundations. Blue-chip dividend stocks that have paid consistently for decades don't generate excitement, but they generate something far more valuable: reliability. Bonds that return predictable income won't make you feel like a genius, but they won't wipe you out either. The transformation in perspective comes when you realize that financial excitement in your retirement years shouldn't come from watching your portfolio swing wildly. It should come from the freedom that stability provides, the ability to travel without checking your account balance, the capacity to help grandchildren without stress, the luxury of sleeping soundly regardless of what markets did that day. That's the real thrill, and it only comes from what looks boring on the surface. Behind the scenes of every financial catastrophe involving someone over 60, you'll find the same toxic elements: leverage that amplifies losses, debt that turns temporary setbacks into permanent disasters, speculation that mistakes gambling for investing, and complexity so dense that even the person buying it doesn't truly understand what they own. These ingredients combine to create the perfect recipe for wealth destruction when you can least afford it. But there's something even more insidious than the lure of exciting investments, something that destroys more portfolios than market crashes or economic downturns. Munger identified it as the deadliest of human weaknesses when It comes to money, envy. Of all the sins that tempt us, envy stands alone in its cruel efficiency. Greed at least offers the temporary pleasure of acquisition. Gluttony provides momentary satisfaction, but envy, it delivers nothing but misery while simultaneously driving you toward terrible decisions. Your neighbor casually mentions their gains in some cryptocurrency you've never heard of. Your brother-in-law won't stop talking about how his Tesla stock tripled. A friend from church whispers about some investment opportunity that's can't miss. Each of these moments plants a seed of doubt. Maybe you're doing it wrong. Maybe you're too conservative. Maybe you're missing out while everyone else gets wealthy around you. This is where portfolios die, not from bad markets, but from good neighbors. The decision to abandon decades of disciplined investing, to chase what someone else is doing, to feel like you need to catch up, this pattern has destroyed more retirement security than any. A bear market in history. The hidden truth is that most of those bragging stories are either exaggerated, temporary, or cherry-picked from a larger portfolio of losses they're not mentioning. But the damage to your psyche happens anyway. The impact of comparison becomes exponentially more dangerous after 60 because the stakes are no longer theoretical. When you're younger and you make an envious mistake, chasing something because others were doing it, you might lose a few years of progress. After 60, that same mistake can eliminate your margin of safety entirely, transforming a secure retirement into a precarious one with no recovery path available. If you've ever caught yourself making financial decisions based on what others were doing rather than what made sense for your situation, write in the comments, comparison trap. Breaking free from the comparison game requires a fundamental shift in how you define success itself. Financial independence isn't a race where crossing the finish line first earns you a medal. It's not a competition where your neighbor's portfolio performance somehow diminishes your own security. Yet we treat it exactly that way, constantly measuring ourselves against others, feeling inadequate when someone else seems to be doing better, feeling smug when we're ahead. This entire framework is built on the illusion that causes tremendous damage. The liberating truth is almost absurdly simple. Your neighbor's 20% return last year has absolutely zero impact on whether you can retire comfortably, travel when you want, help your family, or live the life you've envisioned. Their success doesn't diminish your resources. Their failure doesn't increase yours. The only scorecard that matters exists entirely within the boundaries of your own financial reality. Do you have enough to support the life you want to live? This revelation creates a kind of psychological freedom that's difficult to describe until you experience it. Imagine walking through life completely indifferent to investment bragging, untouched by the fear that you're being left behind, unmoved by stories of spectacular gains happening all around you. That mental space, cleared of comparison and competition, becomes available for something far more valuable: clarity about what actually matters for your specific situation. The journey toward this freedom connects directly to another profound insight from Munger's own experience. Despite being one of history's most successful investors, he looked back with characteristic honesty and identified a pattern of mistakes that cost him dearly. Not mistakes of buying poorly, but mistakes of selling too soon. He discovered exceptional businesses, recognized their quality, watched them perform well, and then, for various reasons that seemed logical at the time, sold them before their full potential was realized. This admission from someone at Munger's level reveals something crucial about human nature and investing. We're psychologically wired to do exactly the wrong thing. We feel compelled to act, to optimize, to improve, to adjust. The idea of simply holding something excellent and letting time do the work feels almost irresponsible, like we're not really investing if we're not actively doing something. But this impulse toward constant activity becomes particularly destructive after 60. Think about what happens when you find a truly solid investment, a quality company with strong fundamentals, consistent performance, and long-term viability. The temptation to tinker becomes overwhelming. It goes up 20% and you think about taking profits. It drops 10% and you consider cutting losses. It stays flat for 6 months and you wonder if there's something better out there. Each of these impulses feels rational in the moment, but they all share the same flaw. They interrupt the quiet power of compounding that only happens when you leave good things alone. The hidden truth behind Munger's regret is that after 60, you don't need to be clever. You need to be patient. You don't need investments that might double quickly with aggressive trading. You need assets that can grow reliably over the years you have left without requiring constant attention or creating stress. The winning strategy isn't complex. It's almost embarrassingly simple. Find quality, hold quality, let time work. Now, I want to explore what happens when you combine this patience with another principle that most people completely misunderstand: the relationship between certainty and wisdom in financial decisions. If you've ever regretted selling an investment too soon because you were trying to be too clever, write in the comments, "Patience wins." There's a fascinating pattern that repeats throughout financial history, and once you notice it, you see it everywhere. The people who speak with absolute certainty about market predictions, who tell you exactly what interest rates will do next year or precisely which sectors will outperform, are almost invariably the ones who end up losing the most money. Not just for themselves, but for everyone unfortunate enough to follow their advice. The correlation between confidence and catastrophic failure is so consistent, it might as well be a law of nature. Behind this pattern lies a profound truth about knowledge itself. The world is staggeringly complex, interconnected in ways that no single human mind can fully grasp. Markets respond to millions of variables, many of them psychological, many of them unpredictable, all of them influencing each other in real time. Anyone who claims to know with certainty what happens next is either lying or delusional. The genuine masters of investing, people like Munger, who actually built tremendous wealth over decades, share a completely different quality, deep humility about the limits of their understanding. This revelation transforms how you make decisions after 60. Success isn't about finding the smartest analyst or following the most confident guru. It's about developing the wisdom to say 3 words that are shockingly difficult for most successful people to utter. I don't know. These words, so simple yet so rare, become a superpower when applied to investment decisions. They create boundaries around your financial life, keeping you safely within areas where you can actually make reasonable judgments and away from nonsense dressed up as opportunity. The transformation here goes beyond just avoiding bad predictions. It's about recognizing that you don't need to have an opinion on everything. You don't need to understand cryptocurrency or biotech or commodities trading or whatever the latest complex financial instrument happens to be. If something doesn't make sense to you after reasonable examination, the correct response isn't to study harder until you convince yourself you understand it. The correct response is to walk away and invest in things you actually comprehend. If this perspective on investing after 60 resonated with you, go ahead and hit that like button. It tells me this content is landing the way I hoped it would. Now, I want to explore an even more fundamental shift in mindset. One that most people never make, even though it determines whether they achieve genuine financial freedom. This journey from employee thinking to owner thinking represents perhaps the most important transformation possible for someone over 60, yet it's something most professionals completely miss, despite decades of career success. Most people spend their entire working lives optimizing for the wrong scorecard. They chase promotions, corner offices, impressive titles, increased salaries. There's nothing inherently wrong with career advancement, but here's the brutal truth that Munger understood viscerally. Titles don't compound. That vice president designation might feel important, but it generates exactly zero income once you stop working. That six-figure salary, however impressive, stops the moment you retire. You've been running on an increasingly sophisticated treadmill, getting better at the game, but it's still a treadmill. Ownership works fundamentally differently. A rental property generates income whether you're awake or asleep, healthy or sick, working or retired. Dividend-paying stocks send you checks regardless of your job status. Business stakes in solid companies continue producing returns even when you're traveling, golfing, or simply enjoying life. These ownership positions create something that employment, even highly paid employment, can never provide. Income that persists independently of your time and energy. The impact of this distinction becomes critical after 60. You're facing the reality that your most productive earning years are behind you. The energy required to maintain high-performance work steadily diminishes. The question becomes urgent. Do you own anything that works for you when you're not working? If you've recognized that you've been playing the employee game when you should have been building ownership, write in the comments. Owner mindset shift. Charlie Munger carried something that most modern investors lack entirely: living memory of true economic catastrophe. Born in 1924, he didn't just read about the Great Depression in history books. He experienced it as a child, watched it devastate families and communities, saw firsthand how prosperity can evaporate seemingly overnight. This experience imprinted on him a perspective that shaped every investment decision he made for the rest of his life. Prosperity is not the default setting of human existence. We've been conditioned by decades of relative stability to view economic growth as inevitable, recessions as temporary blips in an otherwise upward trajectory. This mindset creates dangerous blind spots, especially after 60. The assumption that markets always recover, that downturns are brief inconveniences, that things will work out because they always have. These beliefs feel comforting right up until the moment they prove catastrophically wrong. The hidden truth is that economic conditions fluctuate cyclically, sometimes with breathtaking severity, and the assumption of perpetual prosperity has destroyed more wealth than almost any other delusion. This historical awareness transforms risk assessment completely. When you truly internalize that severe downturns are inevitable, not aberrations, you build your financial life differently. You create buffers, you maintain margins of safety, you avoid putting yourself in positions where a bad economy means personal catastrophe. After 60, this perspective shifts from prudent to essential because you simply don't have the time horizon to wait out a decade-long recovery. The journey from optimistic to realistic doesn't mean becoming pessimistic. It means seeing the world clearly and building accordingly. Munger distilled this wisdom into perhaps his most actionable framework, a success formula based entirely on subtraction rather than addition. Most financial advice bombards you with things to do, strategies to implement, opportunities to seize. Munger inverted this completely, suggesting that what you avoid matters far more than what you pursue. His formula reduces to 3 elegant subtractions: avoid debt, avoid drama, and avoid dumb people. The power in this approach lies in its emphasis on prevention rather than action. Debt acts as an accelerant, transforming manageable setbacks into disasters. It magnifies every mistake, turns temporary problems into permanent ones, and after 60, it represents one of the fastest paths to financial ruin. Drama, whether in business partnerships, family dynamics, or investment schemes, wastes mental energy that could otherwise be directed toward clear thinking and rational decisions. But perhaps most insightful is the third subtraction: avoiding dumb people. By this, Munger means those who are reckless, dishonest, unreliable, or addicted to shortcuts. These individuals create a form of social contagion that inevitably affects your judgment. Their bad decisions, their risky behavior, their toxic optimism or paralyzing pessimism, it all seeps into your thinking if you're not careful about who influences your financial life. The transformation here challenges everything modern culture teaches about success. We're trained to seek, to add, to acquire, to do more. Munger's approach suggests the opposite, that removing negative influences often proves more valuable than adding positive ones. After 60, when a single catastrophic mistake can erase decades of careful wealth building with no recovery runway available, this subtraction-based philosophy becomes not just wise, but essential. Now, I want to reveal the mathematical reality that makes all of this work, the quiet force that operates behind the scenes when you successfully implement these principles of avoidance and patience. If you've realized that success is as much about what you avoid as what you pursue, write in the comments, subtraction strategy. Behind all the strategies, all the wisdom, all the psychological insights, there's a mathematical force so powerful that it's been called the eighth wonder of the world. Yet most people fundamentally misunderstand how it works in practice. They know the theory of compound returns. They've seen the charts showing exponential growth, but they miss the crucial revelation about what compounding actually requires to work its magic. Here's the truth that transforms everything. A reliable 7% annual return, achieved consistently and reinvested patiently, doubles your money approximately every decade. Think about what this means for someone at 60 with 15 years ahead of them. Without taking extraordinary risks, without gambling on speculative ventures, without trying to time markets or pick the next winner, your capital can grow by 2.8 times simply through the quiet accumulation of steady returns. The hidden truth here cuts against every instinct shaped by financial media and modern culture. We're conditioned to believe that meaningful wealth building requires dramatic moves, bold bets, sophisticated strategies that only experts understand. But the mathematics tell a completely different story. The investor who achieves boring, consistent returns ends up substantially wealthier than the one chasing spectacular gains that inevitably come paired with spectacular losses. This revelation about steady compounding only works, though, when combined with the most fundamental principle of all, one so obvious it's often overlooked entirely. The journey to financial security, regardless of how sophisticated your investment strategy becomes, collapses completely if you violate basic arithmetic. If you don't consistently spend less than you earn, nothing else matters. No investment genius can overcome the simple mathematics of negative cash flow. Consider two people at 65. The first earns $250,000 annually, but has lifestyle expenses of $260,000. Despite the impressive income, despite perhaps having a complex portfolio and financial advisors, this person is getting poorer every single year. The numbers don't lie. The second person earns $60,000 but maintains discipline to invest $12,000 annually. That person, despite the vastly lower income, is building wealth relentlessly through the combination of savings and compound returns. The transformation happens when you realize that every dollar not spent represents a soldier recruited into your financial army. After 60, when your time for earning active income grows shorter, these soldiers become increasingly valuable. Each dollar invested begins working to produce more dollars through returns, and those returns generate their own returns, creating the exponential curve that compound interest makes possible. This insight reveals why the obsessive focus on saving money after 60 misses the entire point. It's not about hoarding cash or denying yourself quality of life. It's about the discipline to maintain a gap between income and spending, directing that gap toward assets that generate returns, and then leaving those returns alone to compound. The impact of this simple behavior, maintained consistently over the years you have, remaining, often proves more powerful than any clever investment strategy. Now, I want to bring all of these principles together and show you what happens when you implement this complete framework. When you shift from offense to defense, embrace boring stability, avoid the comparison trap, hold quality investments, recognize your limits, think like an owner, prepare for downturns, practice subtraction, trust compounding, and live below your means. If this fundamental arithmetic, that spending, discipline matters more than investment brilliance, has been a revelation for your own financial journey, write in the comments, arithmetic wins. If you've made it this far, you're part of a rare group, people willing to think differently about money when it matters most. Most investors over 60 are still following advice designed for 30-year-olds, still chasing returns when they should be protecting capital, still playing offense when the game demands defense. But you've spent these minutes exploring a completely different framework, one built on the hard-won wisdom of someone who actually accumulated billions by understanding these principles. This journey we've taken together, from recognizing the shift required after 60 to understanding why boring beats exciting, from escaping the comparison trap to embracing the power of patience. This isn't just theory. These insights have the potential to transform how you approach the most critical financial years of your life. But here's the thing, knowledge only creates value when it's implemented, when it moves from interesting ideas to actual decisions that shape your financial reality. If this conversation resonated with you, if something here clicked in a way that felt true, I'd love for you to subscribe to the channel. We're building something different here, a space where financial wisdom cuts through the noise, where we focus on what actually works rather than what sounds exciting. Every video is designed to give you insights you can use, perspectives that challenge conventional thinking, and principles that stand the test of time. And if you made it all the way to this moment, drop in the comments. Made it to the end. I read every comment, and seeing that phrase tells me you're serious about this transformation. It creates a community of people who think deeply about these topics rather than just consuming content passively. Hit that like button if this perspective shifted something in how you think. About wealth after 60. It helps others find this content, people who need to hear these ideas, just like you did. There's a video right here that takes this framework even further, showing you exactly how to implement these principles in today's economic environment. Click and continue with me over there. Let's keep this journey going together.